Good afternoon. We're back to Zen with a Smile. Today I'd like to talk about what I call living from the inside out instead of the outside in. All of our lives we learn by observation from the time we're tiny little baby. We look at the world around us. We look at the world in which we find ourselves. And that's what I call the outside, coming in. And through this process of watching people responding to you, watching the world come towards you, you start to get this sense of self, who you think you are. This is all from outside information. It's from your parents. It's from your teachers. Most of your teachers anyway, your school teachers. It's from your friends. So you develop this sense of who we think we are. And it's all outwardly founded. It's all based on what you take in and you believe to be so. And in this process, this process can't really be avoided because it's part of the human condition. And it shouldn't be avoided. But it's the source of the ego. Outside information. And then you become vested. You've created this being of who you think you are, who you believe yourself to be. And you're vested in this, invested in this. And the ego gets stronger and stronger. And try to change. Try to change, because one thing the ego doesn't like is change. Because it's fearful. The ego is fearful. Fearful to continue its own existence, its own fragile existence, because the ego is aware of ego. And ego is aware of its fragileness, of its basis on illusion. Ego is aware of this. And it's fearful that we'll wake up, we'll awaken, and start to realize the truth of things. This being, this illusionary being, but it seems real, doesn't it? What else is real if not who you see yourself to be? And in here is the crux of the matter. In here is when you start to look at assumptions. Look at the things that you believe to be true. Look at belief systems itself. What is a belief? I can believe that there's no God, and my friend and sincerely believe in a God. And when you start looking at these things, you start to see that they're opinions. One is just as good as the other. If you believe in God, that's an opinion. Unless you have a direct experience, which is ultimately what you want to do. You want to eliminate the separateness, the feeling of separateness from the infinite, from God, from all-encompassing, from the Spirit. Because in reality, there is no separation. It's not God's up here and I'm down here. And this is the story that the ego will tell you. And the journey, the path. And again, these are allegorical because you're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go. You're not going anywhere. But this journey, for lack of a better word, of self-discovery. This journey to find the truth beyond the ego. That the ego is veiled and obscured in its own self-interest. And to do this, to truly do this, you need to come from the inside out. Remember, I started this by saying we learn from the outside in, taking in what we see, what we feel, what we think. Taking in the sensory perceptions, taking it in and taking it from outside and putting it inside. When we start inquiry, spiritual inquiry, we go to the inside because that's the only place to go. That's where the truth lies. That's where a good teacher will point you. The truth is within. And you've heard this from many traditions for many, many thousands of years. And once you start going inwards, then you're going to bring things outward. The source is in, the expression becomes outward. So it's just a reversal. And in the course of this, it sounds a lot simpler than it really is, like many, many other things. In the course of looking within, where there is no ego, where you can see the true illusion of who you thought you were, or what you thought the world was. And you start to see the relativity of opinions. That's my opinion. Correct. What's your opinion? Exactly the opposite. But the opinions are opposites are no less valid. It's just when you come inward, you learn to see the tolerance, acceptance, that what insight is teaching you is that the most important thing is there's no difference. I am me and me is you, and we are all together. Yeah. On a little blue marble speeding through space. But the illusion of separateness, the illusion of self, and egoic self, I'm talking about the illusion of ego, will dissolve as you go inward. And in that dissolution, you're bringing outward. And as you bring what you've learned from the inside and bring it out to the outside, you're doing everything that you can, this within your power, to make the world a better place, to save the world, to help others. Begins by helping yourself to see first, where's the source? The source is here. And what do I do with this source? What do I do with these realizations? What do I do with when I see the falsity of the ego? What do I do when I see the truth of what's true instead of the falsity of what's false? Let me say that again. The truth of what's true comes from within. What do you understand? The falsity of what's false. The ego. The information that you've created to have this sense of self. They talk about dissolving the self. Dissolving the self is just to take away the power of the ego. And there's a lot of pitfalls in this process, because I've mentioned before, the ego is a slippery little guy, slippery little bugger. And you can fall into the trap of being the spiritual ego will rear its ugly head. It's just a new cloak, a new way of expression for the ego to save itself. And whenever the way that you know that your ego is leading you astray is when you feel separate from the essence, separate from everyone else. When you feel special, the spiritual ego, you feel special. You've had an awakening experience along the process of awakening. Awakening is a continuum. And Adyashanti, one of my favorite teachers, he calls it non-abiding and abiding enlightenment. Non-abiding means that you did have a moment of awakening. And it's a sincere, honest awakening. But the egoic structure will come back in and get its hooks in you if you're not careful, if you're not aware. So the hint is the minute you feel separateness, and whatever that separateness is, if you feel more than somebody else, or you feel less than somebody else, these are clues. These are clues to take a look where you are in the continuum. And then abiding enlightenment means that it's part and parcel. It becomes becomes who you are. And that's interesting, because who you are is the dissolution of who you thought you were. It's the surrender of concepts and opinions and teachings and insights. If it didn't come from here, take a look at it carefully. If it's other than here, that's the separation. If you feel the sense of separation, this is all the clue to where you are on this continuum of awakening. So the spiritual ego is a last gasp. And there's no avoiding these experiences, that you just go through, face them fearlessly. Inquiry, matter of self-reflection. To what degree are you on the, or how far are you on your journey? Where are you at your journey? At some place, at some point, there becomes a fearlessness. There's nothing to be afraid of, because life and death and everything that we think of real is illusory. And the commonality among the illusions is the infinite, is the spirit. All-encompassing spirit without separation. So important to rehash a little bit, important to realize that my opinion is no more or no less valid than someone who has completely the opposite opinion. Opinions are opinions. Thereby they're equal. Once you start saying, I'm right, you're wrong, you're in the veil of egoic illusion. Once you feel that, I know more than they do, I'm more awake than they are. You're in the illusions of the ego. And it's tough. So what do you do in these situations? What do you do when you find yourself your ego is reborn, it's recreated itself? Do you try to ignore it? Or do you engage it? Well, sooner or later, you're going to ignore it. Human beings, we like to ignore unpleasant things, and we can ignore them to a point. But sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with this. You have to deal with this illusion. Because once this process begins, once you're on the road to enlightenment, once you're on this journey, there's really no going back. You might get stalled, you might hit a plateau, it might seem like slow going. But anything that's of any value, was never obtained easily, was it? So, it's embracing this fearlessness. And when I say fearlessness, I'm not talking about foolhardy, walking across the freeway against traffic. Foolhardy, that's stupidity. I'm talking about fearless because you've recognized that there's no separation. There's no beginning and there's no end. It's just ongoing expression. Ongoing expression. And I want to scroll up here a little bit, okay? So, again, from inward to outward. That's from the source is within, the expression is outward. By your behavior, by your ordinariness, by your very ordinariness, because awakening, enlightenment is not special. How could it be special when it's the ordinary condition of everything? So any sense that you can have as on the spiritual path that you have some superiority, it's just a hallmark, that it's a benchmark that there's more work to be done. And once this information, once this source is contact with what's real, the real reality, the real reality, yeah, it will just come out your pores. It becomes part and parcel of who you are. And just because you've awakened, whether it's abiding, as Yasante would say, or non-abiding, whether it's where you are on the spectrum, doesn't matter where you are in this spectrum. What is important is that the unpleasant things in life, the things that you don't want to look at, the things that you don't want to face about yourself. This isn't about the other. Because remember, you give up judgment of the other. You give up the idea that you want to change anybody or anything. You learn to accept it exactly as it is. Learn how to accept it exactly as you find it. So this fearlessness, again, not foolhardy, this fearlessness that comes from the sense of finally understanding that there's no separation. Without separation, how can there be fear? If it's eternal, if life is ongoing process, continuum, how could there be fear? And it's this fearlessness that comes out, one of the most obvious things, because people are full of fear. The ego is a fearful little critter. Okay? Most people's life is based on fear. And when they come across somebody that is truly fearless, again, not foolhardy, fearless, without fear, because the realization is there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. People sense that. In a way, that's teaching without words. That's guiding, because all teacher really is a guide. Someone who uses words because maybe the actions are subtle and not everybody can pay close enough attention. Not everyone can watch closely enough to get the lesson, the non-verbal lessons. But a good teacher is teaching more on a non-verbal level than he or she ever did with words, because the words just kind of fit around something. It doesn't go to the essence. It can't go to the words, lack the ability to go to the source, to go to the nitty-gritty, to really get there. Now, sound is something different. Sound, I believe, certain sounds, or sounds of the heavens, sounds of eternity. So I think it's possible through chanting. Again, this is an opinion. Your opinion is just as valid as mine. I have to remind you. Anything that sounds like an opinion, anything that sounds like a belief, your belief and my belief are both equally valid. So you take these things into consideration. You learn to watch deeply. Witness, they call it. Witness. Witness the witness. Yeah, it sounds like a Zen puzzle. And until you get it, it is pretty much a puzzle. But so imagine you have to reinvent yourself, and so to speak, because your childhood, your whole existence as an adult or whatever stage of life you find yourself in is based on information that came from the outside. It came inside. And you built up a structure of belief, a structure of what the outside is like. And you bring that structure inside, and you're deluded to think that that's who and what and why you are. If you come from the inside, all the secrets, all the keys, everything that you'll ever need is here. A good teacher will point you to that. Go within. And as you go within, as you explore these realms, it will start to come, it naturally comes out. You don't have to do a thing. It will naturally, people will come in your presence and they will feel, first of all, they sense the fearlessness, and that's a little disconcerting. It'll put people ill at ease. But if you have no value, that somehow, because you're fearless, that makes you better or worse or different than anything or anyone else. You're trapped in the spiritual ego, the egoic last gasp to bring you to something. And sooner or later, through self-inquiry, through time and experience and life, which just happens, you begin to see that, oh, I'm still separating myself. So we read and we thought that enlightenment or awakening is some really elevating and some huge experience, when all it is it's the ordinary condition of everyone. We're all aware, we're all awake. We just choose to be in a dream. And spiritual work is taking a look at that dreaming process and trying to get to the source of it and trying very hard, or trying not at all. It's not about trying, is it? Recognizing is probably a better word, because that doesn't imply some effort. It's not effortless though, however. It can be quite hard work, and especially when you start to look at the truth of who you really are. Our secrets, our deepest secrets, have to be dredged up, have to be taken out. You don't have to share them with anyone. No one needs to see your dirty laundry, you know. But you need to be realistic about it. You need to take a real hard look about it. And in the process is a forgiveness. Forgiving yourself is really, really important. In the process of taking a look at your shortcomings, at your dirty laundry, your hidden secrets, the real you that you try to hide, it's the fearful ego. And once you recognize this, oh, that's not me. Isn't that liberating? It alleviates all that responsibility. That's not me. What is you is the process of looking at the things, looking at the delusions, looking at the illusions that your ego has created, that the outside world has brought in, and discarding them for what they are. Nonsense. Not sensical. Our view of the world, our view of who we are, our view of what we see out there is really nonsensical. It's not from the senses. It's an illusion created that we've accepted as a reality. So, inside, a lot of quiet time, a lot of downtime. It looks like downtime. If somebody's watching you, what are they doing? You know, because it's a inquiry. It's a lonely, quiet task. But at some point, you'll start to feel this welling up. Okay. Now I'd be remiss if I didn't point out there's a lot of irony, a lot of seemingly nonsensical things. Just because the world is illusion doesn't mean we don't have to engage the world. When we get enlightened, we still have personality. We still have the same relationships that we've always had. And trust me, closest relationships, brothers and sisters, wives and husbands, lifelong friends, as you go through this transformation, they know you. They think they're living in their illusion. They think they know you. So they're going to put this back on you. Depending on, and this is why a lot of people will keep this process close to the vest, keep the process quiet, and not share that, particularly with the people that you think you'd want to share with the most. the closest and most meaningful people in the world. Because human nature, and that's egoic nature, not really human nature, egoic nature, what we know as human nature, will want to pull you down, bring you back to the form. But you have some tools in your arsenal. Your biggest tool is non-judgment. Okay? Non-judgment. Knowing that your source of information is available to them. When it's their turn, they can find it within themselves, not exclusive to you. So forgiving others, forgiving yourself. But trust me, the nitty-gritty of life doesn't leave just because you woke up. It doesn't leave. The life is messy, and messy life will remain. Just like right now, I have a kitty biting my feet as I'm trying to talk to you. I don't know what he wants. God knows what he wants, but that's kitty for you. He doesn't like me to do anything that's not... Get out of here, kitty. Not directly influenced to him. He's in his little self-centered little capsule. And I have to admit, I cater to the little guy. I love him so much. I cater to him. I fatten him up a little bit, Spoil him, huh, kitty? Yeah. So he's demanding my attention. But don't worry. Don't expect to live in bliss in La La Land, because there is no La La Land. You're going to have a kitty biting your foot, or a child pulling on your coattail, or a wife with the honey-do list, Life goes on. What changes is your investment in what's not real. So I want to close this today with a little something from Adyashanti, a direct quote from Adya. The journey of awakening is just remembering who and what we are, who and what you are. Remembering what we always know, what we've always known. So anything that I'm sharing with you today it should seem familiar. And if it's not familiar now, over time it will be familiar. So Adya is pointing out to us that awakening is a process of remembering who and what we are. And we've always known this. Yes. Thank you.